Hello, my name is Catherine, and this is the information session for the 65 affordable rental units that are going to be offered, that are being offered at Middleborough Station in Middleborough, Massachusetts. And I am from SEB Housing, which is the affordable housing consultant agency who has been hired by the developer to market these affordable units. So if you're watching this after the fact, you're on our YouTube channel, you've seen this recording, and you have questions for us that you weren't able to ask during the session because this is a live session that's being recorded, you can contact us at info@sebhousing.com with any questions you have. So just to give you some background information on who SEB is, so we are, like I said, the Affordable Housing Consultant Agency. So we're not the leasing office at Middleborough Station, but we have been hired by the management team over there to market the affordable units, conduct the information session, collect and review lottery applications as they come in to determine applicants' eligibility for the affordable housing program. And then SEB will also be the agency who is responsible for running the lottery when the time comes. So in the initial phases, we are your main point of contact during the application process. So if you have any questions during that process, or if you have questions on the application, you would be contacting us. But then later on in the process, you would be in touch with the management team. So there's a couple steps in this process. And the first is to apply for the affordable housing lottery. If you're determined by SEB Housing to be eligible based off of what you self-reported on your lottery application, then you'll be entered into the lottery. And after the lottery, the waiting lists will be generated based off of the results of the lottery. So if your position is high enough on those waiting lists, you'll be immediately put in touch with the leasing office over at Middleborough Station, and you'll do a separate leasing screening with them. So just like any other rental opportunity that you may have had, the leasing office over at Middleborough Station might be doing a credit check, rental history check, that sort of thing. So in that second step in the process, during that lease screening, if you are found to be eligible for their leasing criteria, you'll be able to reserve one of the affordable units, and you'll be referred back to SEB Housing to then complete your final program certification. So that's the point in the process, later on in the process, where you'll need to submit your income, asset, and tax documentation. So things like pay stubs or bank statements. And then once that screening is complete, if you're eligible for the program, you'll be able to sign the lease with the leasing office. So all that is to say, when you submit your lottery application as the first step to get this process started, you don't need to submit your income verifications yet. So pay stubs and all of that can wait until later on in the process. When you submit your lottery application either online or as a PDF or an email to us, you'll only be submitting your self-reported income. So if you haven't already and you're interested in this opportunity, we encourage you to go to our website, sebhousing.com. If you select under the affordable housing opportunities section of that webpage, you'll select I want to rent, because this is a rental opportunity. You'll see that there's a Middleborough Station option. And if you click on that, you'll be taken to a page specific to this property with a downloadable version of the lottery application. There'll also be a hyperlink, which is on your screen right now, this jot form link to complete an online application, which we recommend. And also on that page, you'll see an information packet that is another PDF that is available for you. A lot of the information that I'll be reviewing tonight is from that information packet. but we do recommend that you check that out because not everything will be covered. And again, we encourage you to complete this application online if you are able to. It is going to be the quickest way to apply and ensure that your application is received right away. Once you submit that online application, you'll receive an instantaneous confirmation email that it was received. But if for any reason the online application isn't an option for you, you're able to complete that PDF version of the application and email it back to us, or you can fax it back to us. All of that information is on the first page of the application. If you're in the Needham area for any reason, we also have an office there. So there's a 24-hour Dropbox option up there as well. And once you submit that lottery application, if you submit it online using that online application form, like I mentioned, you're going to get that instantaneous email, but that doesn't mean that SCB Housing has already reviewed your application. So you're going to get another more personalized email from us later on, about a week or two later, once we have reviewed your application. And then if you're eligible for the lottery, you will get more information at that point. So it is a fairly brief application. Again, no supporting information, no supporting pay stubs or anything like that is needed at this early stage, but it will be required later on. And the application deadline is January 12th, as you can see. So less than a month left to apply for this lottery. As you can see, the application deadline is 2 p.m. on the 12th. And the reason for that specific time is because the online application form is going to shut down, or it'll be disabled as of 2 p.m. that day. So just keep that in mind if you are seeing this after the fact or later on and it's coming up to that deadline. Make sure to get it in before 2 p.m. on the 12th. I always like to mention you don't need to be a resident of Middleborough or live in the area to apply for the lottery. There are going to be some affordable units that have local preference for residents of Middleborough, which I'll talk more about in a few minutes. Middleborough Station also has their own website. So if you're interested in checking out some more details, images, floor plans, some additional information on the property, you would go to this address here. So it's mstation-apartments.apts.com. And it is expected that
Catherine, this is Cam here. I just want to let you know I was on in case there were any questions early on. I can wait until you finish up as well.
No, that's fine. Yeah, if anyone has any, I don't know this other number here, the 401 number. If you have any questions for specifically related to the property, the location, the amenities, we have someone here from the development team if you want to ask. If not, I'm going to move on to the kind of more about the eligibility process, but I'll give you 1 second here if you want to mention anything as well, because as you know, this is going to be recorded and posted to our site. So if there's anything specific that you want to mention, I'll give you the floor for that as well.
And that 401 number is probably Mike.
Okay.
We're both driving right now.
Sure.
But I can't see if there's anybody else in the room or if there's any questions. So
there isn't right now.
We're here if anything comes up. Okay.
Yeah, there isn't now, but we usually can see later that people are watching it after the fact. So if there is anything that you want to mention that might be of interest that maybe isn't in the information packet or any questions that have been coming to you that you want to highlight, go for it.
Sure. Yeah. And if anything comes up after the fact, they can obviously reach out to SCB Housing, and if there's any specifics we need to answer, we certainly can. But a lot of the information can be found on our website as far as like what's in the units, pictures, renderings, amenities, those kind of things can be found on our website. And then the process obviously goes through SCB Housing. But 135 units. We're expecting move-in sometime in the spring. Have its own clubhouse, heated swimming pool, package lockers, state-of-the-art fitness center, on-site management, 24/7 emergency maintenance, And so just a really impeccable property in a great location, and looking forward to opening up and accepting residents.
Sounds great. Thank you. So all the information that's on your screen right now is information that's in the information packet, and also Cam obviously just let us know a lot more about the amenities and things available at this property. So as you can see, there's going to be 34 affordable units, and it's broken down with 17 one-bedrooms. Those will rent for $2,085. 14 two-bedrooms. Those will rent for $2,345. There's 3 three-bedrooms that are affordable, and those will rent for $2,605. So what's unique about this property too is that all utilities are going to be included, and that includes electric heating, hot water, cooking, fuel, electricity, and water and sewer. So those tenant utilities will be included in your rent, so you will not need to pay for those. Pets are permitted, and there is a free parking space associated with each of these units as well. And then a lot of these other amenities here I know Cam just mentioned. So it's a brand new property, and those affordable rents are not set in accordance with an applicant's income or financial circumstances. So some of you might be familiar with subsidized housing like Section 8 or MRVP. This is not the same type of program because it's not a subsidy program. It's a program that limits the amount of rent that can be charged. So these affordable rents were set up using a formula that's based off of HUD, which is the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, their area median income for the Middleborough or Brockton area. And those amounts are set each year. And the rent amounts that you see on your screen are set for at least the first year of your lease. So if you were to sign a lease for May 1st, you would be paying this amount through at least the end of April 2026. The rent may increase one time per year, but that typically occurs, after the area median income increase, which occurs in the spring. And there would always be advance notice if a tenant's rent amount was going to be increased. And it could never change in the middle of your lease term. So again, if you signed a lease for May 2026, your rent wouldn't be able to increase until at least May 2027. And so we know that there's going to be a lot of interest in this property because we have already received a lot of applications. So since there are going to be more eligible applicants than there are available units, we need to have that lottery process. So the lottery is only open to households who have annual incomes up to or below 80% of that area median income. So I'll talk about the income limits in just a minute as well, but you can see them on your screen here. That is one of the eligibility requirements for this program. So if your household has a total household annual income that is over these amounts, you unfortunately would not qualify for this lottery. So there are 4 eligibility criteria for the affordable housing program. And the first, like I said, is to have a qualifying income. So I'll talk about those amounts again in just a minute, but just to list out the eligibility requirements for you, that's the first one. The second is you want to keep in mind that for eligibility purposes, household priority on the waiting list that will be generated after the lottery is given based off of household composition. So for example, if you're a one-person household or maybe a couple that shares a bedroom, you're generally considered to be what the program refers to as a type 1 household. So you can apply for a 2-bedroom unit, but larger type 2 and 3 households are going to be placed ahead of you on 2-bedroom waiting lists. Some examples of type 2 or type 3 households would be households with 3 or 4 people, as well as some 2-person households. So there's a lot more information about that in the information packet, so you can see how the waiting lists are going to be prioritized. But in general, larger families are going to have priority for larger units. The third eligibility criteria is that you can't own a home at the time of certification. So if SEB is reviewing your income after the lottery and you own a home, it would need to be sold prior to going forward in the process. So that would mean you might need to be taken off the deed and sell the property before that happens. And then the fourth eligibility criteria, it doesn't come up very often, but households can't have financial interest in the development and can't be considered a related party. So if you work for the developer or the management company, you wouldn't be eligible for this lottery. And so just to circle back on the income. So the maximum income limits here, when we're determining a household total household income, I just want to give you an overview of how we do that, even though we don't need pay stubs or anything from you yet in this process. But we're required to count income as a projection of what your income may be for the next 12 months. And that's for all household members. So everyone in your household who is either earning a wage, receiving a pension, might have Social Security benefits, all of that income needs to be counted. The only exceptions to that are minors. So anybody under the age of 18 who is earning a wage, maybe you have a 16-year-old that has a job, we're not going to count their wage income towards your total household income for eligibility purposes. And then also dependent full-time students who are working, we only count the first $480 of their wages. So that might be a college student who's working, but is still considered a dependent. And then we need to, according to the program, count gross income. So not your net income, but the amount that you make before taxes. So although most of us are not taking home your full salary or the amount listed on your pay stub, it is the gross income that needs to be counted when we're determining your eligibility for the program. And then how we calculate income, it's not the same for everyone because everyone's circumstances are unique. So some applicants are going to have that consistent weekly salary throughout the year, but there's other people who are going to be self-employed or working seasonally. So in those type of circumstances, if your income is more sporadic, we may need to look further into the past to be able to project your anticipated income for the next 12 months. And then if you're self-employed, we also need to request a profit and loss statement from you, and your business expenses would be taken into account. We do have a sample statement that you'd be able to fill out if you need it. But in general, any income that you have been making, we do need to assume that you're going to continue making it going forward unless we have definitive documentation saying that you're not working at a job any longer, for example. So just keep that in mind. And when you're filling out your application, either if it's a paper application or online, you want to just make sure that you're completing or filling out the form with all of your income. So like I said, not just wages, but Social Security, pensions, unemployment benefits, anything like that. So same with assets, just make sure that you are filling out that to the best of your knowledge as well. There is no asset limit for affordable rental opportunities. So you could have a decent amount of, or you can have, however much money you have in the bank, but you want to just know that we are still going to need to verify the assets, even though there is no limit that you can have in order to qualify. And the reason for that is because although there is no limit to the amount of assets you can have, if there's income generated by your assets, that income does need to be counted towards your total household income. So you want to make sure you're filling out the application listing, checking, savings accounts, 401ks, anything like that. We will not need verification of personal assets like your car or anything like that. So to switch back to the minimum and maximum incomes here. So as I mentioned, there is a maximum income limit, and that's one of the program requirements here. So if you're a one-person household, your total household income can't be above $72,950. If it is, even by a little bit, you will not be eligible for this lottery. You'll be considered over income. And then the amounts go up from there, as you can see. So if you're a two-person household, the limit is 83.4, and it goes up. You'll also see here that there's an approximate minimum income. So that's not a program requirement, but most most management companies, including the management company at Middleborough Station, has set a minimum income amount. And in this case, it's set to 2.5 times the monthly rent. And these amounts are listed on the information packet. But as you can see here, if you're looking to rent a one-bedroom, you would need to have an income of at least $62,500. And there's a little bit of wiggle room there because the management team has the ability to look at, if you have a sizable amount of assets that you're able to access to be able to pay rent. They might be able to look at that and combine it with your annual income and decide that you do fit their lease requirements. So just know that these maximum income limits are set in stone by the program, whereas these minimum income limits are approximate because the leasing office may be able to look at some assets that you have as well. If you have a Section 8 or MRBP voucher, a mobile voucher that you plan on using, you can disregard the minimum income amounts because they're not going to apply to your household. Since the agency that administers your voucher is going to be paying a portion of your rent. So the minimum incomes don't apply to you. But if you do have a voucher, you do want to reach out to the agency that issues your voucher to confirm that the rents at Middleborough Station are going to be within the agency's payment standards or their maximum rent up front. So I would suggest doing that before the lottery, so you're able to confirm that this could be an option for you. All right, so lottery eligibility. The lottery itself is going to be held on January 28th. It's going to be similar to this format where it's going to be a Zoom call and there'll be a screen share and all of that. So as I mentioned, you want to make sure you get your application in before the 12th. And I do want to say too that there is no downside to applying for more than one unit size. So if you think you're interested in both a one-bedroom and a two-bedroom, for example, then you should apply for both on your application. There is a downside potentially if you only apply for one unit and then later decide that you might have been interested in two unit sizes. And that's because the waiting lists that are generated after the lottery, you will not be on the other unit size if you didn't apply for it before the lottery. So just take some time with your application and make sure that you're applying for everything that you may be interested in. So once you submit your lottery application, SCB Housing, we're going to review that application. We'll contact you if anything appears to be missing. I do want to say if you're filling out the application online, sometimes we have some typos. So just make sure if you get an ineligible notice from us, maybe you get a notice saying that you are over income, but you think maybe that was incorrect. Take a closer look at that email and just see what it's saying, because sometimes someone might add an extra zero or an extra digit to their income by mistake. So if you have any questions about a ineligible notice that you get, please reach out and we can discuss that further with you. So once your application comes in, we're going to review it. If you're found to be eligible for the lottery, you'll be sent an email with your lottery application number, which is in the form of a series of numbers. So that's the number that's going to be drawn during the lottery. So it's just meant to be an anonymous identifier, so your name isn't called during the lottery. It's not a ranking of any sort. It just corresponds to the order in which your application was approved. So if you're the very first person to submit a completed application for Middleborough Station, your number is going to be A.001. And also on that email with your lottery application, the email is going to confirm whether or not your household reported being a resident of Middleborough or a household, maybe your household has a member that works full time in the town of Middleborough, or you may have a child who's going to Middleborough Public Schools. If that was the case, then you may be eligible for local preference. When you're completing your application, you just want to make sure that you are completing that section accurately, because it is going to impact your placement on the waiting list. So if you report that you're a Middleborough resident and you're unable to verify that later on, you will lose your position on the local preference waiting list. So just make sure that you're filling that out properly, and you'll be able to confirm your residency or that you work within the town, about a month or so from now. So like I said, some of the units at Middleborough Station have local preference, which means that local preference households will have priority for those units, and will have positions ahead of all non-local preference households on the waiting list after the waiting lists are compiled. That email is also going to confirm the bedroom sizes that you applied for. So take a look at that and just make sure that you're reviewing it and confirm that all of that appears to be correct. There's also going to be a documentation requirements guide attached to that email. So it's either going to be a link or an attachment, and that is just meant to be a guide for you to have further details on the types of documentation that is going to need to be submitted prior to the final approval that SCB Housing will do after the lottery. So it'll let you know how many pay stubs you'll need to submit, bank statements, that sort of thing. So just keep that as a handy guide as you go through the process. So I mentioned that the lottery will take place on January 28th. So the lottery results will be shared with applicants that evening. And I like to remind everybody of that, because even if you attend the lottery, you're not really going to know where your placement is on the waiting list until later. So you're welcome to attend and see where your lottery application number was drawn, but it's not going to tell you a whole lot, because I first need to sort the results after the lottery drawing. So all of the priorities of these waiting lists, like local preference or your household type, and all of that will need to be taken into consideration after the fact. So during the lottery is going to be conducted using a website called random.org. So that's going to allow for instantaneous results rather than pulling numbers from a box, for example. So the lottery numbers will be randomized on the screen, and the results from each drawing will be shared with attendees. Every lottery number is going to be drawn that night. Sometimes you think of lotteries and you think, okay, there's 65 units, there's only going to be 65 winners or numbers drawn in the lottery, but that's not the way that these work, because the purpose of this lottery is going to be to establish a order for the waiting list. So in general, it is more beneficial for your number to be drawn early in the lottery, but like I said, it won't be the deciding factor as to whether or not you move forward in the process to lease a unit, because we still have to take those priorities into consideration. So for example, if a type 1 household, a small household with only 1 or 2 members of type 1 is drawn first in the lottery, but they've applied for a 2-bedroom unit, they're going to be behind all of the type 2 and type 3 households on that 2-bedroom waiting list. So we like to say too, if your number is drawn further on the waiting list, it doesn't mean that you won't be able to move forward in this process. It just means that households ahead of you would need to drop off the waiting list for you to be able to move forward, which will happen. Not everybody that applies to a lottery is going to be eligible in the end or is going to be interested when the time comes. So after the lottery, we populate the waiting list, we take local preference and whether or not your household requires a disabled accessible unit, your household type, all of that into consideration, and then we send the waiting list to you that evening. When you're reviewing that email and the waiting list, you're going to find your lottery application number to see where you fall on the waiting list. Then you're going to have a much better idea as to whether or not you're going to be moving forward in the process. to the next step, which is to apply for a lease with the leasing office. So when you're reviewing your lottery results, email, you're going to find your lottery application number, like I said, and if your lottery application number is highlighted in green, that means that you're going to get a separate email from us inviting you to, or actually you won't be getting a separate email, but you'll be put in touch with the leasing office to contact them and they will also have your contact information as of the lottery night, so you can connect to initiate the lease screening process. And just a reminder too, SCB Housing, we screen for the lottery, we screen for program eligibility, but we're not going to screen your household for lease eligibility. The leasing office will be doing that. So the management company is going to do, the credit check, rental history check, background check, that sort of thing. And so you just want to keep that in mind. If you are lease approved, that's the point in the process where having a position near the top of the waiting list is going to be beneficial to you, because say you're the top person on the 1-bedroom waiting list, you're going to have the first choice in reserving an affordable 1-bedroom unit. And that's true even if someone behind you on the waiting list happens to complete their lease screening first, because the management team is always going to honor the order of the waiting list. So the first person on the 1-bedroom waiting list will be able to select the first affordable unit. Once you've reserved an affordable unit, the leasing office is going to let SCB Housing know so we can coordinate the eligibility review with you. So that's the point in the process where SCB Housing is going to request that you submit pay stubs, all of your income, asset, and tax documentation for us to do that review. So hopefully by that point, you have that information ready. You'll have about 10 days to get it into us. It is a lot of information to submit, so if you don't have everything to submit to us on the first attempt, you don't have to worry about that. That happens all the time, and we'll work with you until you get a completed application into us. We'll send you an incomplete notice with, detailing the information that you need to submit. So we want to make sure that you get through this process, and we know it can be quite a lot to gather. So once you're found eligible by SCB Housing, you're able to get connected again with the leasing office and sign the lease agreement for the unit that you have reserved. And then once you're leased, you're done with lease screenings until your lease renewal date. So next year, next fall, next winter, whatever it might be, a few years before your lease renewal date, we hope that you have loved living at Middleborough Station and you want to continue living there beyond the first year of your lease. If you do, you're going to need to recertify your income with the leasing office prior to your lease renewal. So say you signed a lease for May 1st, 2026. Sometime in early 2027, you're going to be asked to complete a lease renewal or recertification with the leasing office. So if your income at that point has increased and is now above 80% of the area median income, that's probably fine, because households are going to remain eligible for the affordable rent and to stay in the affordable unit as long as your income doesn't exceed 140% of the current year's area median income. So there is some wiggle room there. Just to give you an example of that, a household of 2 would qualify for this lottery with an income at or below $83,400. That same 2-person family can make up to $116,760 at the time of their recertification in order to remain eligible to rent an affordable apartment at the affordable price. So that's usually good news for people. If you get a new job, if you get a raise, it doesn't mean that you are all of a sudden going to be paying market rent, depending on the amount of that increase. So that covers what I wanted to get through. I don't think there's anybody else on the call right now who is a potential applicant. So what I want to close with is just to remind you that that application deadline is January 12th. And there is an online application that we recommend you use. And if you have any questions after today, or if you are watching this after the fact, we recommend that you contact us at info@scbhousing.com or at the phone number here, the 617-782-6900 number, because we can, assist you with any questions you have on the property or on the application process. We look forward to getting your application, and have a good night. Happy holidays.